right. And there we are. All righty. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to put our slide deck on in a minute. We had a couple of little glitches this morning, but we're good to go right now. Thank you all so much. Let me go on and disable the waiting room. 1 second, I'm going to do that and we'll begin. Thank you all so much for your patience, for being here. And we have a great program in store for you. All right, let me do this. Disable the waiting room. There we are. So everybody is going to jump on in. Thank you so much for my friends on our platforms that we're on right now. I'm super happy that you are here, and we will begin. I'm Carole Copeland Thomas, and I thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited about the program that we have, and we will begin now. I'm going to go on and show our screens, our slides that we have here. We welcome you so much. We're very glad that you are with us. Our friends on Zoom, and our friends elsewhere that we are hoping to bring on in a few minutes. All right, so just hang in there with us and we will begin the process very shortly. All right, hang on 1 second. Let me get my slide deck here and we will begin. Right. All righty. I'm going to skip through. We're very happy that you're here, and we're hoping to pull in people from YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn, but we're going to rock and roll. And if we're not able to do that, we'll make sure to post this on my accounts on those particular platforms as soon as our program has concluded. But again, thank you all so much for being here. Super happy that you're here. I'm very, very happy for all of our sponsors who are here with us. Meet Boston, thank you so much for all that you've done. The TJX companies, Loomis Sales, State Street Corporation, Eversource, Eastern Bank, the Lurie Davis Wealth Management Organization, and Boston Medical Center. Thank you so much for all that you have done, and thank you for your continued support, particularly now when we have so much going on in our world. All the information is captured at mssconnect.com. You can go there and listen to this program and watch this program. It will be, will be there after the program concludes. All of our biographical profiles, our agenda, everything is at mssconnect.com. And we say thank you so very much. Now, I want to also say it is Pride Month, so we're very glad that Pride Month is here. There are going to be parades tomorrow in the United States all over, and even the LGBTQ community is under duress because of the times that we're living in. So we celebrate and say thank you so much for those in the LGBTQ community because it is Pride Month. Now, I'm going to bring my friend on who is going to take it away and share with us some information about the US-UK Summit on Race, and that is Bill Wells. Bill, give me a second. I'm going to bring you up right now. All right.
Okay, I'm on.
Take it away.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, as I saw in the chat, because we're truly across the globe with today's program. The US-UK Summit on Race is intended to do a number of things. One is to educate, inform, educate, illuminate, and also to bring to the audience topical issues that are most relevant, not only just to US and UK, but we are a global platform. The participating co-hosts just happen to be in the US and the UK, but we truly have had a global audience from the time we started about 4 or 5 years ago. The program today is again multi-purpose, and Carole has already mentioned that today is well, not today, but the month is Pride Month, so that is being recognized. I should mention also that today, June 6th, is D-Day, which is an international recognition of the end of World War II and finally the crushing of the fascist regime in Germany. So a lot going on today. We're also then going to be recognizing Juneteenth, which is a national holiday here in the United States. It's the newest federal holiday. It was known as it's been known as Emancipation Day, Freedom Day, Jubilee Day. That's when enslaved African Americans learned that they were free. And it wasn't until almost 2 years after President Lincoln had actually issued the Emancipation Proclamation on June 1st, 1863. Another very, very important and significant aspect of today's program is our remembrance and reflection on George Floyd. This is the it's the fifth anniversary, if you will. That's a program that is an incident that actually went worldwide. It became global. We all saw it. It was videotaped. It was the horrific taking away of a human life at the hands of a very, very demonic, racist policeman, and sparked riots all across the country, particularly here in Minneapolis. As a result of that particular incident, it was Carole and I that had a conversation a day or so after that occurred on what can we do. And that was the impetus for us moving into what we called Race in Minneapolis. And we held a series of town hall sessions that were global, pulled in upwards of 4,000 people. And that was right after, during the early part of the COVID pandemic. So we were able to capture voices from all over. I still remember some of the comments coming in from Australia and beyond. But today we want to make sure that we recognize, just not remember George Floyd, but recognize that he became literally a linchpin, a moment in time that sparked a lot of conversation, a lot of angst, and that conversation continues. So if you don't mind, and I would appreciate for us just to, at this particular time, just have a moment of silence in remembrance of George. So. Okay, thank you. As I said, George Floyd's murder, if you will, it sparked a number of different things. And one of the things that we are now experiencing is what we're going to be discussing today. Our topic is called, it's the weaponization, it was our attack on democracy, because quite frankly, it goes way beyond just DEI. DEI is certainly a core element of our democracy worldwide. The theme that we have developed for today is attack on democracy and the weaponization of DEI. That's going to be the basis for our conversation today. Carole did mention that we have a chat room, and we're hoping that we get significant audience participation. So put your comments into the chat. There will be appropriate times during today's program when we can actually pull your comments in. And our keynote speaker, who is a very, very adept individual, and you're going to find out more about just who he is and the depth and the breadth of what he brings to this conversation today. So I'm sure it's going to be a very, very lively discussion. So with that, I think I've covered most of what we need to do today. We have approximately 2 hours to be together, 10 o'clock Central Time, where I am in the state of Minnesota. East Coast is an hour different, and across the globe, you folks are better at adapting your time schedules than I am. So with that, I'm going to now hand it over to our colleague in the UK, Garth Dallas, and we have a video which is a tribute to George Floyd. And Garth, it's all yours, my friend.
Thank you very much, Bill. Thanks, Carole. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. It was really apt of you, Bill, to ensure that we recognize and pay respect to the memory of George Perry Floyd. Let's give him his full name. It was a moment in history that the world responded. And we have put together a video from an international perspective that looked at the incident and some individuals who were involved with George Floyd and their comments. I must say that this video includes content of racism and violence that may be triggering for some viewers. Please be aware of this before proceeding to watch it. Feel free to stop viewing at any time during the 6-minute duration of the video and return thereafter. Carole.
Body cam footage of a police officer pulling up in a car and getting out by a corner shop. 25th of May 2020, Minneapolis, Minnesota.
That blue one over there. All right. I see your hands.
The officer taps on a car window and George Floyd throws up his hands.
See your other hand. Please, both hands. Do nothing.
George is led away from the car.
What's your first name?
He's pretty good. George Floyd.
What is it?
He's a good guy. George Floyd, she said. All right, let me calm down now. It's feeling better now.
Keep walking.
Okay.
The officers march George towards their police car.
Please, man. Don't leave me by myself, man. Please. I'm just claustrophobic. That's it.
Well, you're still going in the car.
When I watched the video of George Floyd,
Don't do me like that, man. Please. Okay, can I talk to you, please?
Yes, you get in this car. We can talk.
I am claustrophobic.
what I saw was evil.
All right, man, please.
George resists being forced into the back seat.
It was reminiscent of a lynching.
The officers push his arms up behind his back.
But after that, we saw millions of people around the world take a stand with the Black Lives Matter movement, a global uprising against injustice.
Please, man. I can't fucking breathe. Come on out. Look at you.
Because when police continually oppress and violate people's rights and abuse them and murder them, at some point, there is going to be an uprising when people have had enough.
Crowds of people at Black Lives Matter protests.
It was like a flashpoint. The echo of that came like this groundswell of final truth, that actually understanding what the world looks like through our eyes.
There was clearly a shared sentiment amongst all of us, which was change has to happen.
2020 felt like a window of opportunity. One moment to challenge the status quo.
Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin has been charged with murder.
But it led to a huge backlash across the world.
Attempting to challenge the status quo, there was always going to be discontent, because at that point, there's like large swathes of defensiveness and denial.
His report concluded that there is no proof of institutional racism.
And our country will be woke no longer.
Did the movement fail? What the hell happened?
Breaking news this morning, there's a man who is dead after an encounter with police. The video posted to Facebook shows an officer with his knee on his neck. We're not showing that video just yet. Want to make sure that man's family is fully notified.
I remember the television had a black guy laying on the ground.
Selwyn Jones, George Floyd's uncle.
My heart was breaking for that dude. And my sister calls me. And that's when I realized that I was sitting back looking at my nephew die.
A video showed an officer pressing his knee into the neck of the man who was later identified as George Floyd.
Selwyn takes out some photos.
His favorite pastime was shooting hoop in the hood. You know, he's at the park right here now in the 5th Ward, balling. It just brings me back, man, to the days where we shoot ball and laugh. I was bigger than he was. But after 15 or 16, I still treated him like he was a little dude, but he was a little bit taller. George was my big sister's baby boy. I watched him grow from a little baby to a grown man. I love that dude a lot. I'm never gonna be able to look at his beautiful smile. He don't get to see his baby grow up. That day on May the 26th, that's when the world changed. That video played every second of the day, all over the world.
Minneapolis gehen für George Floyd auf die Straße.
George Floyd, un ciudadano negro a manos de un policía blanco.
London.
An investigation is underway in Minneapolis into the death of another black man in police custody.
London, a protest in London. What's going on? What we're seeing here feels uniquely American. I guess it's not.
Well, it isn't anymore, Steph, because what you're seeing is those same protests being mirrored around the world. People both inspired and outraged. This is just one example of the protests that are happening now and building around the world, from Australia
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
to Paris yesterday, where 20,000 people protested.
Meanwhile, back here in the U.S., 3 other officers have been charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder.
We kneel together for 8 minutes, 46 seconds. That's the time it took for George Floyd to die.
I thought we would just bring it back and show the full memory of what happened on the 20th of May, 25th of May, 2020, and the 21st, the day after, and across the world. We, not just as Black people, but as people of dignity, looked on and thought we had to do something about it. In 2025, a lot of the initiatives are unfolding, and we will be talking about that in terms of the dismantling of DEI and whether or not that is in effect a dismantling of democracy. Carole, over to you.
Right. I was just putting in the chat, that is such a powerful video. We could have a whole lecture on that, but I'm sure that our guest speaker is going to incorporate what we just witnessed in his message. This is going to be a masterclass coming up, and you've had this powerful video that has set the stage for what we're going to hear, and a remarkable slide presentation as well. So thank you so much, Garth, for presenting that to us. And we're going to introduce our guest speaker, who is the president and CEO of HenderWorks Incorporated and co-founder of the Institute for Sustainable Diversity and Inclusion. He served as the Chief Diversity Officer for Weyerhaeuser Company, and he served as the Weyerhaeuser Company in Federal Way, Washington, until his retirement in December of 2013. He is still working hard, so I don't know about, he went from one initiative to the other. He is an internationally recognized diversity thought leader and has been invited by numerous companies and organizations to to share his expertise. Excuse me. He has addressed members of the General Assembly of the United Nations on intercultural and interreligious diversity and addressed a high-level panel of the Alliance of Civilians in Madrid, Spain in 2008, Istanbul, Turkey in 2009, Rio de Janeiro in Brazil in 2010, and Doha, Qatar in 2011. He was the keynote speaker at the 9th and 10th forums in Fez, Morocco. The list just goes on and on. Please go to mssconnect.com and you can read more about his amazing record and achievement when it comes to human relations, human resources, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I just want to also say, in addition to his wonderful family, he lives in Seattle, Washington, in that area. He's a graduate of North Carolina Central University and Stanford University Executive Program, and his cousin is civil rights attorney Wade Henderson. Without further ado, we are going to introduce to some and present to others Effenus Henderson, who is going to present an amazing presentation. Hello, Effenus, take it away.
Well, first of all, I'd just like to take a moment and reflect on that powerful video of George Floyd's life, and some of the words and some of the scenes that we saw there. And some of the words that struck to me about that was oppression, violation, abuse of people's rights, and so forth. And oftentimes these events and situations are quite triggering. My speech today is entitled DEI Under Fire, Addressing the Strategic Assault on Inclusion and Democracy. Today, we're confronting a very critical issue, and we're seeing it in the US in spades, the coordinated assault on DEI and its implications for democracy. It's not just about DEI, but we're seeing quite a challenge and pushback on things that are impacting who we are as a nation, as a people, and as a world. And again, I'm Effenus Henderson, and this summit will equip you, hopefully, with some strategies to resist and to rebuild. And so let's begin. So I know we have a deck, and I'm waiting for that to come up. And again, I thank everyone who's here today, and I really appreciate the opportunity. This is a very unsettling time, and so we are really going to try to talk about that. Let's go to the next slide. 3 points about DE under siege, diversity being demonized, and this borderless threat. It's not just a U.S. issue; it's a global issue. From Florida's bans to things that are happening perhaps there in the UK as well. Next slide. What we want to do today is to identify the architects of this backlash, understand their timing, and arm ourselves with counter strategies. This is about survival and resistance. Let's move to the next slide. We'll dissect the legal and political attacks, try to give you some information about the opposition's playbook, what they're doing to enhance this pushback, and it will end with some actionable strategies and steps to protect DEI in your organization. So that's kind of what I'd like to do. I want this to be more of a learning event in terms of what you can do within your communities, within your organizations and families and so forth. Next slide. What you'll learn today, hopefully by the end, you'll grasp the strategic nature of these attacks and how corporations are reacting in particular, and how to preserve DEI impact while staying compliant with some of these changing regulations and laws, particularly for those of you that are here in the US. In the US. Next slide. So let's take a moment and reflect together. What I'd like for you to do here is I'd like for you just to post in the chat what's the biggest threat you're facing. It could be legal, it could be cultural, political, just in terms of this greatest threat to DEI and democracy. What are you seeing, and what do you see as the biggest threat? So I'm going to take a moment, and I just want to see what kind of thoughts you have about the current context for the work. I'll just wait for a couple of you to share some thoughts and comments. Social Security, the guardrails. Biggest threat is apathy towards it now. Let's not participate seems to be a theme. Ignorance, lack of inquiry, dignifying Black identity, Project 2025, risk aversions, jobs for our young graduates. All of these are important and critical issues and threats to what we're seeing around the world and in the U.S. Even things like the rule of law, voices, lost voices, bigotry, fear by people, safety, social media, and so forth. All of that. So yes, I'm going to start out with this latest issue that has come out of the U.S. government, this out of the Department of Justice. Next slide, and keep providing the comments as we go through this, because I think it's extremely important for us to think about this. DEI is now a political lightning rod, and so what I want to do is unpack that a little bit for you. And let's talk about, next slide, how DEI is being politicized. Opponents, for example, label DEI as woke extremism, just to justify bans. This fear of reputational damage is causing internal retreats, organizations that are that have been very active and supportive of DEI programs are getting somewhat quiet. And we think that the strategy of politicizing DEI is creating that challenge there. So I really I think that's part of it. Those fear-driven retreats, these executive orders, these media campaigns, all of this framed as woke extremism. And so we have, it's being manufactured in many respects by a far-right group. A lot of it came out of what's called Project 2025 and so forth. And so it's something to be concerned about. Let's go to the next slide, and we'll talk about the Civil Rights Fraud Initiative. This is the most recent thing that we've seen in the U.S. This is coming out of the Department of Justice, and it's their enforcement tool that was just recently announced, and it really has some chilling effects in terms of these certifications, these whistleblower bonuses, these targets, and so forth. In my view, it's I got to go back to my. It's a Trojan horse, and it forces organizations to certify their compliance or face brutal penalties. They're inspecting what organizations are doing or will be doing, and these whistleblowers are actually being incentivized to attack DEI. And in my view, this is more of this legal warfare that's going on. And I don't want to read these notes here for you. You can kind of get a sense of it, but I encourage you to investigate this concept of CRFI, the Critical Rights Fraud Initiative. And again, it's just coming out with the Department of Labor. And again, it's mandatory certifications the organizations must comply with. You can't make any false claim. There are treble damages up to $23,000 per violation. These whistleblower bonuses, people can earn 15 to 30% of penalties for blowing the whistle on something they may challenge as discriminatory and unfair. And the targets includes universities, corporate hiring goals, supplier diversity programs, and so forth. And why it matters, it forces DEI rollbacks. Companies start dismantling to avoid liability, start looking at what they're doing. It creates a legal minefield. Even these stealth DEI programs where organizations have rebranded their programs are at risk. And it's resulting in 68% fewer companies publishing diversity data. So I wanted to set the stage by just talking about that very briefly in terms of this Critical Rights Fraud Initiative. Next slide. The key areas of scrutiny, and I won't go deeply into this page here, but there are 4 areas here around hiring practices, ERGs, employee resource groups, supplier diversity, and even public statements that leaders are making, pledging their support could be challenged. So nothing is safe. these hiring goals, these ERGs, these supplier diversity goals are targets in terms of this CRFI, this this strategy here, and so it's something again for us to be looking at as we think about our work as DEI professionals and so forth. Next slide. So the question is, how are corporations or organizations responding? What we're seeing is, in some cases, DEI titles, Chief Diversity Officer title or Manager of Diversity, are being retracted or changed. Language is being shifted. People are going into their communications, their written material, their websites, and actually changing information about their diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies and so forth, particularly if it relates to things specific to race-specific language, and they're shifting it to more general belonging, inclusion, those kinds of things. And a lot of them are being very silent in terms of the work that they're doing. So the key here, I'd say, is that corporations are rebranding or just going silent. For example, Meta cut racial metrics by 89% to avoid scrutiny. This is a crisis of courage. So they're actually cutting out information about their goals and timetables and so forth, particularly in areas where they may be underutilized. Next slide. There are three. So I just want to emphasize the three major strategies that we're seeing. One is stealth DEI. That's the renaming of the program. Instead of racial equity, they're renaming the programs. They still are trying to be supportive and reinforce their commitment, but they're shifting the language and the information about what they're doing. Two, they're looking at, in some cases, offshoring initiatives and so forth. And data suppression. What we're seeing is some are playing defense. They're again renaming their programs. They're moving budgets offshore, particularly if they're an international company, and they're hiding the data. They're not just disclosing it. They're not displaying it on their websites and so forth. But silence won't save us. We need to be bold, and we need to encourage our organizations to be bold and stepping up front of this issue, and to continue to reinforce the fact that this is a very strategic lens in which to look at the way the organization itself or the company itself operates and so forth. Next slide. So there is a legal and financial fallout of some of these. I talked about that earlier with the False Claims Act. These treble damages. You can see here fines between $11,000 to $23,000 per claim. They're the reputational risk, high-profile cases that we're seeing here in the U.S., such as Target and the boycott by Jamal Bryant and others. Advising folks not to shop at Target, but we're also seeing here in the Seattle area a company that really has reinforced its commitment to diversity, Costco, and we're seeing a significant uptick in their business as a result of that. So there is a reputational risk, either pro or con, in terms of how you respond to some of this pushback on DEI. And this last one here, this whistleblower incentives, the CRT's quid tam provisions encourage the insiders to sue, meaning HR documents, internal emails, and training materials could become evident and so forth. So next slide. This is creating a chilling effect on equity efforts. Three things in particular: a culture of fear, state resistance, seeing it in some states like California and New York are passing sanctuary laws to shield their businesses. We're seeing it in terms of investor pressure, and we're seeing a lot of shareholder proposals, and we're seeing a lot of them being, in terms of this anti-DEI stuff, being rejected. Upwards of percentages of 98 to 99% of the shareholders are voting to support DEI efforts and so forth. This fear is the goal. I just want to say that. But what we're seeing is resistance is growing. We're seeing a lot of folks stepping up and beginning to push back. And again, that reference to California's DEI sanctuary laws and worker protests, all of these protests prove that we're not alone and that there are lots of folks that are supporting the work that we're doing. Next slide. So who's behind all of this? Who's driving this backlash? Three areas of action. One is the political campaigns, and those political campaigns are efforts to portray DEI as divisive. We're seeing think tanks and advocacy groups launching legal offensive, such as America First Legal, for example, which is a group headed by Stephen Miller. And we're seeing how DEI is being anti-DEI messaging is being integrated in social media campaigns and used to amplify some of the work here. So it is a coordinated, what I'd characterize this as, is a coordinated ecosystem with politicians, legal groups, and media working in lockstep. And what we have to start doing is naming that, calling them out, challenging them, and countering them with the business case, the moral case, and so forth for an inclusive and diverse organization and society and so forth. Next slide. So let's focus on the Trump administration and the federal agencies and their strategy in terms of pushing back on DEI. The main thing that we're seeing is this Executive Order 14173, ending discriminatory DEI programs. The other thing, obviously, is the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Fraud Initiative and the Department of Education cutting funding for DEI offices. The question is, what's the motivation? This political rhetoric framing DEI as reverse discrimination and anti-meritocracy, which could be further from the truth in my view. Just generally in terms of this, federal agencies are dismantling DEI. They basically shuttered a lot of the DEI programs within the federal sector. The Department of Education has defunded schools with DEI offices. Black enrollment has dropped 18% in Michigan because of some of this work in terms of some of the schools. This is a systemic, I guess the key point is it's a systemic attack on DEI through the federal government and their allies and the conservative think tanks such as the Manhattan Institute and Heritage Foundation and others. So let's go to that next slide. These conservative legal groups, there are three I highlight. America First Legal, which is headed by Stephen Miller, who's now a senior advisor to the Trump administration. I actually took a look at and analyzed a number of the lawsuits that they filed against major corporations. I actually looked at about 40 of them in terms of DEI programs. And what I found was that they were picking a particular, what I call tactic within a broader diversity strategy and framework and attacking that and using that to amplify and challenge that organization's overall practices, which then resulted in some organizations completely backing away from their DEI efforts. Company notably that I looked at was Tractor Supply Company, and they completely backed away from some of their work. The Fox News and Daily Wire groups also are used to amplify a lot of this overreach, but shareholders are pushing back on some of these anti-DEI efforts and so forth. So we're really wanting corporations not to cave in to this work. One thing I'd say here is that Stephen Miller's America First Legal is suing companies like Starbucks and NASCAR. The Heritage Foundation drafts the model bans, the things that they do, and they're exploiting this SFFA, the Affirmative Action Plan ban to attack all DEI. They're taking that that decision by the Supreme Court as the way they're going in and attacking corporate programs, even though that was focused specifically on college admissions and so forth. Next slide. A lot of this anti-DEI work is actually emanating in Republican-led states. There are three things I just point to: the Texas SB 17 banned DEI offices in public universities. In Florida, the Stop Woke Act prohibited workplace DEI training as they deemed it divisive. And in Oklahoma and in Arkansas, there were similar bans on discriminatory DEI practices. The question is, what is discriminatory DEI practices? And there's not a lot of good information about what they mean by that. And so they're amplifying things that are already protected under Title VII, for example, and challenging people for anything they might do, which I would characterize as like good faith efforts that has always been a part of affirmative action plans and so forth. And their tactic is to threaten funding cuts using the state contracting power to enforce compliance. And we're also seeing that with the Harvard situation, where the Trump administration is challenging some of the practices at Harvard and threatening loss of nonprofit status and so forth. Those kinds of things are things that we're seeing by these Republican-led states and the administration as well. Let's go to the next slide and just look very briefly at these corporate backlash drivers. Here, again, I mentioned Fox News and the Daily Wire are being used to amplify those things, but there's this shareholder activism. That's these groups like the National Center for Public Policy Research is publishing a lot of this anti-ESG and DEI resolutions. Companies like Goldman Sachs and Target are scaling back their programs to avoid any of these lawsuits by the Department of Justice. And again, the conservative media outreach and so forth, things like Fox News and so forth. Next slide. The anti-woke ecosystems influencers, I just listed here just some of the folks that I believe are sort of being central to some of this pushback, starting with Elon Musk, who called DEI propaganda and banned DEI programs at X, Twitter. These public attacks on corporate DEI acts and the DOGE work that's been going on within the federal government, although I think he's exiting the federal government here recently. Bill Ackman leading high-profile campaigns against Harvard's DEI practices, tying them to anti-Semitism, and pushing Fortune 500 boards to drop race-conscious hiring. Christopher Rufo, who actually is from the Seattle area, actually was one of the early architects of some of the pushback when he challenged some training in the city of Seattle, which led to Trump in his first administration suspending all DEI training and development in the federal sector, which was later reversed by President Biden, which was then reintroduced when he came back into power this year. Robbie Starbuck, who's a conservative filmmaker and activist who's been aggressively targeting corporate programs. He was the one behind the attack on Tractor Supply and John Deere and a few others, like I believe General Motors. And I don't know if General Motors is right, but you know, just some of the major corporations and so forth. And again, I talked earlier about America First Legal filing these legal complaints against companies and so forth. And there are others like Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk who have been involved in this work as well. Next slide. Why do these people matter? A question you might ask: because they shape opinion, they create pressure, and they file or fuel lawsuits. They turn public sentiment. They force corporate retreats from their DEI work, and they feed these lawsuits. For example, Disney cut DEI after the Starbucks attacks, sort of I call it asymmetric warfare and so forth. So they do matter because they can amplify and spread this word through social media and so forth. Next slide. Let's look at the strategic timing of these attacks and why it's so what's the word I want to use now? Why is it happening so much now? Well, first of all, if you look at society, particularly in the US, demographic shifts are challenging dominant power structures. You're seeing more Black and brown people in positions of power. And so this white male hold on power and privilege is being challenged as the demographic shifts in the US at all levels continues to change and accelerate. If you look at the statistics on births and so forth for the millennial generation below, quite diverse, and we're heading towards a majority minority society, particularly in the US. And with all of the interconnections across the globe, diversity becomes a much more significant lens in which you look at relationships, customer bases, communities, and so forth. Also, the growing visibility of the racial inequities post George Floyd has helped to fuel that as well. And this 2024 elections and rising nationalism, even in UK politics, have been part of the reason why it's happening at the velocity that it's happening at now. And so what I believe is happening is they're terrified of these demographic changes, and George Floyd's legacy in particular sparked this global equity effort, and now they're fighting back before and during this new administration in 2025. Let's look at the next slide, the opposition's playbook. In terms of how they are seeking to undermine support for diversity, equity, and inclusion. 4 or 5 points here. One, claiming reverse discrimination, focusing attacks on race-conscious language and practices, filing lawsuits to tie up DEI in courts, framing DEI as an un-American or perhaps un-British type of initiative, and use this infinite regress to challenge data-based information on DEI. And I'll talk about that next. This regress strategy, which I thought was kind of interesting. I just found out about that here recently and so forth. But I'll talk about that in a moment. Let's move to the next slide. Legal challenges against DEI. This is a section of the weaponization fields. So let's examine how they're treating or twisting the law. Next slide. 3 things to consider: the Supreme Court decisions narrowing affirmative action, even the executive order that President Trump rescinded, Executive Order 11246, which was the one that reinforced and supported affirmative action by federal contractors, was gutted or at least neutered by the Trump administrations. These lawsuits against race-conscious policies, is another area in which they're focusing on, and the increased scrutiny of corporate diversity goals, and they're treating aspirational goals in corporations as quotas. And so they're using these to create a case that these are discriminatory and result in reverse discrimination. There are 300% more lawsuits been filed, anti-DEI lawsuits, since 2020. In my view, this was a siege and so forth. Let's look at that. The weaponization, the bullet points. Again, 300% increase in lawsuits since 2020. 75 plus corporate targets, companies sued for DEI programs. A lot of that, again, is coming from America First Legal and Stephen Miller's group. And 40% program reduction. That's in terms of a decrease in race-conscious initiatives and so forth. Next slide. So very quickly, Trump's executive order 14173. Key points about that. It bans discriminatory DEI practices in federal agencies. The question is, what is discriminatory DEI practices that are not already covered by existing law and regulations, which executive orders can't supersede? That's like Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title VI, and Title IX are all examples of that. They are expanding the definition of merit to include race, gender-based considerations. The question is, what is merit and what is meritocracy, and how do you think about that? I have a whole section on a whole presentation on meritocracy and so forth, but that's for another day. And they're encouraging litigation and state level emulation of what they have in this executive order and so forth. So anyway, that's a little bit, just a high level overview of executive order 14173. It's a wrecking ball, and it redefines merit to include race, gender, and invites lawsuits, to exclude race and gender, I guess I should say, and invites lawsuits and states to copy it. Next slide. So there is this federal assault on DEI. And these are just the examples here. We've talked about them earlier. I won't go over them again. Executive Order 11246, neutralize. This disparate, this is a key one here that I want people to pay attention to, is this work on disparate impact. They're trying to gut that, which is the remedy, the theory that is used to remedy systemic patterns of systemic discrimination and so forth. And it's used to in things like conciliation agreements and litigation and so forth. So this disparate impact, which goes back to the 70s with the Griggs versus Duke Power Company, where it was introduced, is a very important thing to look at. And I think what they're doing now is to try to eliminate that so that you don't have these large type of settlements and decisions and so forth. And again, education is being targeted. For example, their Michigan Closed It program, black enrollment down by 18%, and the Civil Rights Fraud Initiative, which is weaponizing this False Claims Act. They're currently looking at Harvard, for example, and this impact here is this chilling effect on equity efforts, lawsuits, and this rebranding is accelerating as we look at that and so forth. The OFCCP now audits for neutrality. This is the other key here. Disparate impact requires smoking gun proof, and this, in my mind, is legal gaslighting. Next slide. So this one is really kind of hijacking the narrative. And again, these key players like Stephen Miller, Robin Starbucks, and these lawsuits and op-eds are painting DEI as discriminatory. What they're trying to do is rewrite history and to view the work that we do as discriminatory. And they want to headline it in a way that causes people to doubt the importance or impact of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so the question is, how do we reclaim that narrative and talk about the positive impact of diversity? And there is good literature and data to suggest and support the fact that DEI is valued by most Americans in particular. There's been research, majority, the plurality of folks do continue to support diversity efforts and programs. But it is being attacked by these players, and we just need to be mindful of that. There's a critical, the next slide is, they're also targeting DEI leaders in what I call a new era of harassment and intimidation. And what you're seeing is they're being doxxed, targeted, publicly criticized for the work that they do. And there's disproportionate scrutiny of Black and brown leaders, as you see it in the commentary. Even things like when the plane crashed in Washington, D.C. a few months ago, the president referred to that as a result of a DEI hire. These are ways to harass and intimidate and disparage the work of people of color and so forth. So it creates a chilling effect on advocacy and innovations. Summarize the point on this slide. DEI leaders are, in my view, hunted. This doxing, this harassment, this intimidation is intimidation 101. But we won't be, and we shouldn't be silenced. We must continue to speak out about what we're observing and what we're seeing. Next slide, some hot button issues, and I won't go into a lot of detail about them, but these are issues that are turning inclusion into controversy. Things like critical race theory, trans rights, pronoun use, falsely tied to DEI or amplified as being bad things, and we know better than that, but we need to be speaking about those things. This misrepresentation of curriculum changes, and this fear-based messaging stoking public backlash also is part of how they're taking terminology and words and weaponizing them and turning them against inclusion, moving them more into a controversial issue and a topic and so forth. Next slide. So I talk about this regress, and it's part of something I read recently about some of the strategies in terms of the war on equity. It's what's called weaponizing delay, and if you're a DEI professional or practitioner, when you give them information that's fact-based, they respond by, well, tell me more about that. I don't understand. Give me more information. You give them more information, and they says, well, I don't like the information. Where'd you get the source? It's kind of that weaponization of delay by constantly asking questions about the integrity of the work that you're doing and so forth, all to have more of a delay in terms of taking action. The goal here isn't to win, it's to exhaust you in terms of just the amount of effort and response you have to give to leaders and folks about the work. And it was cited in the work of Jonathan Feingold's work, next slide, in terms of this growing theory about the right to equality. And he's published in the Connecticut Journal of Law an article about that, which I think is good. The right to inequity exposes the truth. The anti-DEI movement doesn't want fairness, it wants surrender. Their playbook relies on this infinite regress tactic of perpetual delay, shifting demands, manufactured uncertainty that's designed to grind the work to a halt. And the point is they'll never be satisfied because the goal isn't to improve systems, it's to preserve their hierarchy and so forth. Next slide. So here's just an example of this infinite regress theory. It follows a predictable loop. Show us the evidence. For example, in this case, there's no proof of systemic bias in hiring and admissions. The reality, when presented with data, such as the Meta audit showing racial bias in our algorithms, opponents dismissed it as anecdotal or politicized. They may come in and say, well, try a different approach. The claim is that race-conscious policies are illegal. Use race-neutral ones. And again, the reality is when institutions comply, opponents sue, arguing these policies of covert racial balancing and so forth. Or 3 is still not good enough. If the disparities still persist, your solutions fail. They ignore the inequity is structural, that no single policy erases the centuries of of exclusion and so forth. So it's a tactic here in terms of demanding information, then dismissing it. They demand race-neutral policies, then they sue. The goal, permanent stalemate in terms of the work that we do. Next, so there are some contradictions. Next slide. Three things I just want to point out here: selective color blindness, hollow meritocracy, and hypocritical local control. And just quickly under color blindness, a claim that policies must be race neutral when in reality, legacy admissions are overwhelmingly white, 60%, 68% white, due to networking advantages. Even things like electoral maps maintain racial gaps to avoid scrutiny. So the question you need to ask is why only attack these programs that address those kinds of inequities or inequalities? Under the area of meritocracy, well, they claim DEI lowers standards. If you look at, for example, a case where white named resumes got 36% more callbacks than similarly qualified black named ones. The question is, where was merit when bias favored you, as an example? You start to challenge and confront the assumptions and the misinformation that they're presenting and so forth. So I just want you to think about these contradictions and how to exploit them. Next slide. So part of what we have to do is really look, how do we break this cycle? And here are 5 tactics to fight this DEI backlash. Start with flip the script. Stop defending. Attack the hypocrisy. Use their legal tools. Leverage standing and Supreme Court rulings. Use Title VII, for example. The Grutter decision, diversity equals compelling interest. Griggs ban neutral policies with racist effects. That's where the disparate impact theory resides there in some of this. The armor plate programs frame DEI as business critical. We've seen a lot of the research on that from McKinsey and others. When the narrative, the war narrative, expose bad faith attacks. Again, first they sued us for using race. Now they're suing us for not using race. The goal, equal no progress. And build shadow power. Bypass the cowardice that we're seeing in a lot of our institutions, including Congress and so forth, and start building coalitions to reinforce the need for diversity, equity, inclusion, and so forth. Next slide. The stakes and the path forward. Here's the end game. They want a world where inequity is legalized, i.e. via colorblind precedent. Equity is criminalized via lawsuits against even race-neutral efforts, and the burden of proof is permanently inverted. You must disprove bias in every tiny policy change forever. Our response should be, name the scam. Infinite regress is not an argument, it's a delay tactics. Speed up, don't slow down. Preempt lawsuits, think, get ahead of what's coming at you and dare them to litigate. And fight for offense, not defense. Equity can't win in courtrooms alone. We need political, cultural, and economic power. Next slide. Let's look at the legal strategy to dismantle DEI. This is that quiet use of litigation. Very quickly, let's move to the next slide. Again, weaponizing the law. Here are 5 ways in which they're weaponizing the law. They're targeting race-specific programs, things like scholarships and internships. They're attacking corporate equity commitment statements, such as hiring goals or aspirational goals and supplier diversity. They're eroding trans rights in healthcare. They're banning things like gender-affirming care under consumer protection laws. They're exploiting legal ambiguities. They're redefining discrimination to punish equity efforts. For example, they're using Title IX to attack trans athletes' bans as sex discrimination. And 5, they're undermining workforce protections. They're challenging things like pronoun usage and so forth, and inclusive restroom access. These are some of the things that that they're doing to weaponize the law against equity. Amazon, for example, Amazon's HBCU pipeline program was sued. Trans healthcare bans are framed as consumer protection. And again, this is what I call lawfare. So let's move to the next slide. This quiet use of litigation just shows you where the focus has been. These are the 4 top areas with hiring goals, how you're going after putting together diverse slates, diverse candidate requiring diversity in your pools and so forth, supplier diversity efforts, internships, scholarships, are some of the areas where they're challenging these things. They're picking off the programs one by one, and we can't be silent about those. We've got to be challenging when someone wants to dismantle or stop those programs. Let's look at the next slide. The legal landscape today. This is a busy slide, but just quickly, what's legal and what's under threat. Couple of things. Title VII and ADA law still stand in the U.S., but race-conscious programs are in the crosshairs. The Supreme Court decision may expand what was done in the Harvard admission case to employment. So we need to start preparing and anticipating that that might in fact happen. Look at the business case programs because McKinsey basically said the diverse teams drive innovation. So tie your diversity efforts to your business strategy, your mission, your shared values, and so forth. As you're looking at things like ERGs, employee resource groups, you can't continue to focus on a particular dimension, but it has to be open to anyone who is interested and an ally for that. You can't say that only women can belong to a women's ERG or blacks can only belong to a black employee's ERG. You have to be open and inclusive of everyone. The things that are under threat, these race-conscious policies, again, I talked about scholarships and internships, supplier diversity quotas, federal contractor DEI, audits now of reverse discrimination. You heard the law yesterday where there was a ruling in terms of reverse discrimination against this white female who filed a lawsuit. She won. So it essentially says that anyone could be sued for discrimination and so forth. There's no the reverse. It's anyone who feels that they've been unfairly treated in 70. In that case, 78% of contractors have dropped explicit goals. This is from Harvard Law in 2025. And then the trans rights, the inclusion issues, healthcare, workplaces, and then these legal ambiguities. And again, I want to underscore and underline this disparate impact theory that now requires intent proof. And this Supreme Court may expand this Harvard case to employment. So just be aware of that. Next slide. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this particular topic, what federal contractors need to know. But I will say, one, you need to know what are the compliance expectations under this new executive order. What does it mean when shifting from equity metrics to neutrality audits? By the way, what I am hearing is that they're thinking about merging the Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs, which was in the Department of Labor, with the EEOC. And those of us who've been in this type of work think that's really a bad thing because the EEOC is already significantly backlogged in the discrimination cases that they're reviewing. And it's more of a reactive as opposed to a proactive approach to looking at workplace equity and inclusion and opportunity. It's more after the fact. Again, these things are heightened under the False Claims Act for misreporting and so forth. Next slide. What's still allowed under federal law, I talked a little bit about that, Title VII, ADA, the Equal Pay Act, and those laws that are in place in states and in local jurisdictions and regulations, they still apply. Next slide. Understanding illegal DEI, where DEI crosses legal boundaries. Just an example of that, for example, giving preference based solely on race or gender can violate Title VII. DEI tied to job quotas or mandatory race-based outcomes is at risk, and the use of race as one factor in a broader strategy remains legal. So just again, to remind you of those things in terms of that. Quotas are dead, but consider race among many factors. It's still legal, at least for now. Next slide. Practices where bias surfaces. And what I'd like for you to do is to, if you're in an HR or diversity role, look at these 6 areas and try to think about, when I think about workforce representation, where would bias likely occur? It could be in recruiting, it could be in outreach, it could be selection processes and so forth. In the outreach, how might bias occur in terms of the way you're going about your strategic outreach to underserved or marginalized communities? Participation really is about how might bias apply in terms of participation in training programs or succession planning processes or ERGs, and the kinds of ways in which participation may help to give one an advantage or expose one to information and knowledge that might help them in their career. Policies, your HR practices and policies, where might it occur? Looking at those to see if there is any language that might create a challenge for you. And even your day-to-day practices. For example, what's your recruitment practice? Do you only go to certain schools, and those certain schools don't have good diversity and so forth? So think about those. And then just the behavior, are you creating psychologically safe environments? Have you looked at hostile work environments and so forth? So looking at the behavior of leaders and team members for patterns that might create an illegal DEI practice and so forth. The key here is that bias lurks in outreach, policies, and daily practice. So you need to continually audit those practices to make sure that you're not, falling into trouble there. Next slide. So just as a very quick risk check in terms of how to stay legally sound, review your programs, spot the risk, the areas that you may have a higher level of risk, and build documentation. Make sure to document what you're doing to ensure that they're fair and legal. Documentation is the armor. These prove that your programs are fair, legal, and business critical. Next slide. Assess your DEI risk with tools. I just doing a little bit of self-promotion here. I've done some work on this question of, are your practices legal, problematic, or legal? So look at those, and this issue of meritocracy. How do your DEI efforts align with emerging regulations? And are your merit and talent practices fair, defensible, and up to date? The key here is just to use tools to stress test your DEI practices. Are they compliant? Are they defensible? And are they aligned with business objectives and goals and so forth? Next slide. Fortifying DEI. We've also spent some time, thinking about your messaging and how you fortify your DEI efforts. I'm a co-director of the Institute for Sustainable Diversity and Inclusion, and we've published a book, Fortifying DEI, Tools for Handling Polarizing or Triggering Conversations, Navigating These Emotional Triggers and Talking Points. And it gives background on the early attacks on DEI and what it's fueling them, and a call to action here. Next slide. Fortifying DEI, use the audits to assess compliance, align your DEI goals with documented business objectives, and train your leaders in legally compliant, inclusive practices. Next slide. So what are the global implications here beyond the U.S.? What we're seeing is UK, Canada, the European Union are facing parallel pressures. So it's not just in the U.S. The ISO standard, ISO 30415, 2021, is the global D&I standard that offers some benchmarks, some information that can help guide the development of your DEI practices. I served as the convener for the working group that actually established this first global standard. So it has some very useful guidance on the areas, the outcomes, the metrics, and so forth, the activities and so forth. So it provides a very good way to examine your programs. And it starts with governance, from leadership to boards, to the culture within the organization and how you think about that, to the human resource life cycle, starting with workforce planning to recruitment, compensation, and remuneration, and so forth. So it provides a useful tool for that. You can Google it, and you can find out more information about that, about the ISO 30415, 2021. Some nations are resisting this U.S.-style retrenchment. So we've seen some European countries push back and say, we're not falling into the trap of what the U.S. is doing in terms of this anti-DEI thing. They're still very much supportive of the work and so forth. Next slide. I'm going to start bring it home now with just some action planning for DEI practitioners in terms of from compliance to strategy, just some things to do. The question is, how do we move from survival to strategy? It's not just a matter of surviving. It's, okay, let's be strategic about the work that we do and think about the things we can do. Next slide. Couple of things that are really critical. I sort of said it earlier, things like risk assessments, ensuring that your DEI is integrated as a lens in which you're looking at and carrying out your business imperatives. Make sure you've got good defensible program records, and build alliances with your legal team, your HR community, and other allies and advocates and so forth. Next slide. And reframe the conversation, maybe think from diversity to talent, focus on skills and potential, from equity, opportunity, emphasize access and development, from inclusion to innovation, highlight business performance benefits, and so forth. I guess the key is rebranding strategically. DEI is, in fact, talent development, opportunity, expansion, and innovation. They fuel those kinds of things. So just think about how you might reframe the conversation about this work. Next slide. And measure what matters. Kind of look at what are the things that are going to be important to us to measure in terms of metrics and so forth. Business performance, innovation, talent retention, market expansion, things like that, and so forth. So these are areas to look at. And again, I think someone said, actually, DEI is making sure that you don't miss out on talent. That's a great comment there. Next slide. Communicate. I mean, you've got to talk about that. You got to suit your leaders up to talk about it as well. Help them create what's an elevator speech for how they talk about DEI value. Start by focusing on the business case first in terms of leading with performance and innovation, using data to support. It's not anecdotal information, but you've got clear metrics and data to show how this is helping you. So have a data-driven narrative, and build your strategy and your communications within the legal framework. And and to reinforce the fact that you are aware of and can demonstrate compliance with the law and the regulations and so forth. Next slide. And then engaging these allies and stakeholders, legal counsel, make sure you're in compliance. Employee groups, ERGs, this has got to be all hands on deck thing. So mobilize your grassroots support in the organization at all levels. Look at who are some external partners, work with and build and participate in coalitions that help to shape thinking around things that we can do. And by all means, secure executive sponsorship. Work with your leaders so that they understand and can speak to these issues in an informed way, and to be able to show the connection to the company's mission, vision, and shared values, and so forth. Next slide. Future-proofing your DEI strategy. Just a couple of things here. These quarterly compliance checks in terms of legal reviews, this adaptive planning. You don't think that what you put in place 2 years ago still works. So you have to be very adaptive and resilient in how you're thinking about the work that you do. Focus on high impact outcomes. I'm an outcomes-based person. What's the outcome? How does it help us as an organization achieve our results? Who's going to be accountable, and how do we measure progress there? And part of that is really thinking of how to integrate and talk about this in terms of the core operations of the organization. And again, work to build coalitions both inside and outside the organization through networking and participation in industry groups or nonprofit associations and so forth. Isolation is death, so you have to build these networks to survive and be sustainable over time. Next slide. So again, this checklist format, just something to think about. Annual DEI compliance audit, business rationale documented, legal review conducted, inclusive leadership training delivered, partnerships established with legal and risk officers and so forth. Just some reminders. I like to reinforce the message oftentimes. But next slide. So DEI backlash, and I want you to think about DEI as not just something to itself, but it is in fact growing as a threat to democracy, and how these anti-DEI efforts are undermining fundamental freedoms and so forth. So let's look at that very quickly as we close out. DEI is democracy in action. It ensures equal voice in workplaces and schools. It corrects systemic exclusion in things like voting, wealth accumulation, power. And it is protected by Civil Rights Act, which is our strongest democratic covenant and so forth. So I want you to think about those. They attack legally, politically, and culturally, but we know their playbook. Now we have to counter in terms of this stuff, in terms of the pushback to this. Next slide. Oh, wait a minute. I just want to say one other thing about this. There were 132 anti-DEI laws that have been put in place since 2023. We call that Jim Crow 2.0, mask is fairness. We must sound the alarm. So just think about it. There are the laws and regulations across the country and at the national and local and state levels that are pushing back on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Next slide. Keeping DEI strong. Well, I think I've said that. The pushback playbook, again, weaponizing the courts. 18 states ban DEI in public institutions, and the framing of equity as tyranny and so forth. Next slide. Here you can see the Democrat, the threats. Creates two-tiered rights, privilege for some, silence for others, erodes trust. 62% now believe systems are rigged, parallel to the pre-1965 states' rights rhetoric, masking exclusion. Attacking DEI isn't about fairness, it's about freezing the status quo. And again, I was reading off the the data on the 132 anti-DEI laws passed since 2023 and so forth. 89% are targeting race and gender equity and so forth. Next slide. So in summary, keeping DEI strong and compliant. Next slide. Just as a closeout here, in terms of practice, these are just some tips for you to think about very quickly. Tie DEI to your business goals and talent acquisition and development strategies. Clearly explain the why between your inclusion work. Spend time talking about that. Show how DEI helps with performance and results. Focus on fair processes, not just numbers. Make sure programs are open to everyone. Keep good records of what you're doing and why. Regularly review legal risk and train your leaders on inclusive, lawful practices. So that, I know this was a kind of a fast-paced set of PowerPoint slides and everything, but I just wanted to give you as much information as I could about what's going on. It's a very complex time, and it requires all of us to be alert and so forth. So I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you today. If you have any questions, just let me know. I don't know. I'll turn it over to Carole now for closing us out here.
Woo! This was a master class, an absolute master class. Hopefully we'll have time at the end. We've got a couple of things to do before we end our program as close to time as possible. But Ephesus, stick around. This was a master class. To get this kind of information in its true form is rare now because so many people want to run away from this. But what I want to do, I'm going to skip ahead and then we're going to have a response from Garth Dallas. Everybody stick around. You got to stick around because we have a very cool song that has been written. I want Ephesus to give us the 30-second version of this song. Tell us about the song, what it's all about, and then we're going to play it for you. So take it away, Ephesus.
Well, part of what I believe we have to do is to think about where we're carrying the message and how we're carrying the message out. And I've been fortunate to have a son who's a Grammy award-winning music producer. He didn't produce this, so it challenged me to think about how can we take concepts around the work that we do, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and create them in a way that resonates with younger people who might be out at the club, maybe at the barbershop or somewhere else. But you're giving them a message that they can start to think about, and perhaps through the song, and this one's really focused on DEI and democracy, is to think about how that can help a younger person kind of get it in terms of this work. So, and that's just a statement about we have to think outside. We can't just preach to the choir and to those who already get it. We've got to look at places where people go and how they process information, and oftentimes music and music composition helps that. That was the reason for the song.
This is going to be great. And before we play the song, look right into your camera. We're going to take a quick shot. So look right into your camera. 3 shots. This is number 1. I'll do a countdown. Yep. Turn those cameras on. There we are. Good, good, good. 3 shots. This is number 1 of 3. 3, 2, 1. All right. 2 more. All right. Hang on. This is number 2 of 3. 3, 2, 1. Awesome, awesome. And then number 3. Love it, love it, love it. 3, 2, 1. Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much. All right, let me go back into speaker mode here. There we go. And stay tuned for this fabulous DEI song. I love it. You can bebop to it. That's okay. Here we go. It's coming.
Is it really DEI you fear? Or is it the mirror of democracy that no longer reflects just you? Let's tell the truth.
You say you fear inclusion, but it's justice you despise. You say it's woke confusion, but it's truth you can't recognize. We pulled back the curtain, and now you scream attack. But it's not your seat we're stealing, you just never look back. Or is it DEI you fear, or a world that's finally clear, where power's not reserved for just a few up here? Is it black and brown you blame? Is it pride you try to shame? Or is it democracy with a brand new name? Oh, a name called us, all of us. A name called truth, unapologized. A name called justice, reclassify. Yeah, we see you, but do you see why? You chant merit, but you built the maze. You scream reverse while erasing our ways. You post the flags, you quote the founders, but fear the freedom that actually surrounds us. You want the dream, but not the dreamers. You want the song, but not the singers. You want control without reflection. A country locked in one complexion. You don't fear a program, you fear a change. You don't fear fairness, you fear rearrange. Not afraid of policy, you're afraid of parity. Not afraid of equity, you're afraid of clarity. Is it DEI you fear, or a nation drawing near, where every voice can rise and every soul appears? Is it progress that you dread, or just the loss of being ahead? This ain't about erasure, it's about who gets fed. Wet, 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 wet. Fed with freedom, fed with fire, fed with hope and not your liars. Fed with dreams you tried to hide. We're marching on with arms open wide. You feel what you can't control. Let it go, let it go. You fear the truth too bold. Let it go, let it go. You fear the march of change. Let it roll, let it roll. You fear what's just not strange. Let it show, let it show.
It's not DEI that broke your throne. It's democracy you never own.
Woo! Now we all want to go to the Effenus Henderson School so we can learn how to create songs on AI. That is absolutely wonderful. When I practiced last night with my daughters, my older daughter said, okay, if it's songs going to be available, if we can somehow play it with your permission, love to do it. That was fabulous. Are we going to sell it? Let us know. That was great. Thank you so much. Thank you. We're going to bring the response. Absolutely. We're going to bring our responder on now and then probably have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions before we end today. Again, this was a masterclass, a little longer than we normally have, but this is important information. And as Effenus has said, we have to do things differently now because of the times that we're in. Garth Dallas, take it away.
Wow, wow, wow. You see what we've done there? We paid homage to George Perry Floyd, and I had to give you a disclaimer just to ensure that people are aware of the content of the video that may cause some stress. And we've now moved into a bit more uplifting beat from our brother Effenus. And I just want to say, my response is pretty much titled, Reclaiming Democracy Through Inclusion. So thank you, Brother Effenus, for that powerful and deeply necessary keynote. Your words remind us that the attack on democracy and dismantling of DEI are not abstract or isolated. They're strategic, global, and immediate. And as our sister Cozy said in the chat, in the UK, we say EDI, which is Equality, Diversity, and Inclusion, but it's pretty much the same concept. And as someone speaking from Liverpool, England, I want to offer a response that builds on Effenus's insights, one that draws a line from what is happening in the United States to to what is unfolding here in the UK and around the world, even if in quieter but equally dangerous ways. Because what we're witnessing is a global pattern of erosion. While in the US, we see direct assaults, banning of books, outlawing DEI offices, and targeting school curricula. In the UK, the erosion is often disguised under the language of neutrality, efficiency, and free speech in true British way. From ministers denouncing woke ideology to public sector DEI training being quietly defunded, we're witnessing a rollback of hard-won equity work across government, education, and industry. Or we say hard-earned. We're going back many, many years that our brothers and sisters have fought to get to the point where we now have what we call the Equality Act 2010, which I put some information about in the chat. Only yesterday here in Liverpool, it was announced that Pride 2025 has been cancelled. At the top of this discussion, Carole made mention of Pride 2025 and how we should celebrate that. Here in Liverpool, only yesterday, it was cancelled because Barclays cancelled its funding. In typical British manner, it was whispered quietly. It may be because Barclays has some concerns about poor financial management and lack of accountability of the organisers in relation to previous year's funding. While that may be true to a certain extent, I'm saying, and I'm wondering, would this have happened hadn't the global pattern of regression started around November last year in the USA? And it is no coincidence that this regression comes alongside rising right-wing tendencies, increased anti-immigration rhetoric, and bold anti-inclusion language in political circles. We've seen silence, institutional silence, where once there was a commitment. Barclays, I believe, is one of those. As Brother Effenus laid out, what's under attack is not just DEI, but the entire ecosystem of democratic accountability. Courts, schools, voting access, DEI is a connective tissue. And when it is cut, the whole body suffers. Let's be clear, when DEI is attacked, democracy is not far behind. So what is the real threat? Let's be honest, DEI is not being attacked because it's failing. It's being attacked because it is working, because it challenges privilege, because it demands accountability, because it affirms that justice must be more than performative, because it rebalances power. And so now it is being rebranded as divisive, expensive, wasteful, ideological, as dangerous. But that is a strategy to isolate inclusion from democracy, to cast fairness as partiality, and to present progress as peril. I've been woke. Whether through defunding, fear-mongering, or labeling equity works as radical, the tactics are coordinated. And in the UK, they wear a more polite mask, but the goal is the same, to preserve the old order. What are we witnessing here in the UK? Quietly. We see the silencing of racial justice language in government communications, universities abandoning decolonization initiatives under political pressure, equality officers dismissed or replaced with culture managers. A right-wing party, Reform UK, recently won control of a council in the suburb of Liverpool. It's very close to home here. Its leader, Nigel Farage, who you may hear of, he's a close friend of Donald Trump, he immediately announced that anyone in the council with DEI jobs or titles should immediately seek alternative jobs. That's what was said about 2 weeks ago here in the UK, the national television. We also see public institutions being too scared to speak, let alone act. Public leaders avoiding the word race altogether. All of this while hate crime rises, social trust erodes, and marginalized communities are once again told to wait their turn. This isn't neutrality, it is retreat. And when public institutions retreat from inclusion, they leave communities behind. So the question is, what must be defended? We must be absolutely clear, DEI is not an add-on to democracy. It is the evidence of it. Where there is no inclusion, there is no representation. Where there is no equity, there is no justice. Where there is no belonging, there is no peace. This is not about defending a trend. It's about defending the democratic imagination, belief that all people have the right to shape the world in which they live. And when we say all people, it goes back to the conversation in the chat that when we talk about DEI, we're not just talking about race. In the UK, we're talking about the 9 protected characteristics. Brother Effenus went across the whole conundrum and mentioned different aspects of diversity and inclusion that's being attacked. It's not just about race. As Effenus reminded us, this is not new. The pushback we're seeing is part of a long tradition of resistance to justice. But each time we've pushed forward anyway. I'm a lawyer, and I know the importance of engaging with DEI. I've been to court as a Black lawyer with a white client, and I've been addressed by the ushers as the client rather than the lawyer, simply because I am not meant to be a person in that position, even though I was dressed usually in my suit and tie, and the person that I was going to court with was dressed in jeans. So here's my cry from Liverpool to the world. And I speak to our brothers and sisters across the UK, the US, and beyond. Let us name the attack for what it is, a political project to consolidate power by narrowing who counts. Let us push back in our councils, in our classrooms, in our communities. And let us not be intimidated by the backlash, because the backlash only comes when we're close to something transformational. I know I risk a lot by speaking out based on who I am, but that's the risk that I'm taking here in the UK. If the attack is global, then so too must be our defense. From Minneapolis to Manchester, from Birmingham, Alabama to Birmingham in the West Midlands, we must rise together. And I will close boldly by stating that DEI is democracy in practice. Inclusion is not weakness. It is not division. It is a practice of democracy. And democracy, as our brother Effenus reminded us, only survives when it is inclusive of all. Let us stand together globally, vocally, and politically and say, we will not retreat. We will not be silenced, and we will not trade justice for comfort. As Hillary Clinton stated, talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not. I say DEI closes the gap. We are the hope. We are the resistance. Thank you very much. Carole, over to you.
Oh, wow. Wow. I want to bring Brother Bill on as well. That was simply amazing. What a response to a very comprehensive presentation in a bold manner. And I'm just torn when you have mentioned that the Pride Parade has been canceled in Liverpool. That lets all of us know that this is a worldwide problem, that we have to stand up and say no as we move forward with diversity, equity, and inclusion. That was quite riveting. Thank you so much. I'm going to bring Brother Ephesus back on, and I want to thank Sharonda White, who has been diligently checking all of our platforms that we're on. There was one interesting question that she brought to my attention I'd like for Ephesus to answer for us, and it says, before we close out, and it says, how can AI be trained to ensure DEI is essential for business success? Ephesus?
Okay, that's a fairly substantial question. And the way I would answer it is this way. You know, many of us are now beginning to learn about things like ChatGPT, DeepSeek, and other AI platforms. The first thing I would start by saying is, don't let AI steal your thunder. That basically AI is a tool to enhance your thoughts, your insights, and so forth, and to help improve that in its efficiency in the way what I call a copywriter or a person who's reviewing your work would do. I mean, one of the ways that, just to give you an example of how I create my messaging, is I do a daily walk. And in my daily walk, I carry my phone, and it has the Chat GPT function, which I can actually dictate a thought or an idea that I have in that moment. Because if I didn't have the phone and didn't have the ability to do that in that moment, I'd probably lose it and say, well, what was I trying to think about? And so what I do is I'll talk into it about a theory or about a change or a practice or an idea. And you'll find that a lot of my work on LinkedIn, the posts that I do, actually is generated through my morning meditation walk. And then, so I just encourage people to not let AI be the driver of what it is you say or do. Let it be the enhancer and the enabler of your intellectual property and information. The other thing I'd say is to be curious and to not hoard information and things for some other reason. I think now's the time for us just to share what we're learning, what we're knowing, and sharing our ideas about things. So AI to me is just a tool to use to help you do that and do it more efficiently and faster.
Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing.
Can I jump in as well here,
Jump
Carole?
in, Garth. Jump in.
I'll put another perspective to this. We've got to be careful of AI. I do some work with a NHS Trust, National Health Service Trust here in Liverpool in the UK. As a non-executive director, the only Black person on the board, every year we have to do these stuff that they check that we're still of good standing. And AI was used by the company that they'd given the contract to. And on one of my holidays, I think I told you about this, Carole, one of my holidays in Tenerife, I took a photograph of a T-shirt of Bob Marley in a shop. I wasn't wearing it. I took a photograph of the T-shirt with Bob Marley on in a shop, and it flagged me up as a potential risk, as a potential user of banned substances. So we've got to be careful. But I didn't remain silent. I absolutely challenged that by the chair of the board, and I know that I was profiled, but it's not easy to prove it, and this is a lawyer in me speaking. But that was flagged up, and I was the only person on the board that was flagged up in that particular instance. So we've got to be careful of how these technology is used in certain areas.
I would agree with that. The other thing I would say, just to add on to that, is that for me, because I have a fairly deep background in DEI and HR and equal employment opportunity, I'll know, because if you don't know the topic or the information about the topic that you're writing about, I could give you something that may not be completely accurate. So I think it's it's a useful tool in the area of expertise that you've got, where you have the ability to discern misinformation or disinformation. And so I'll just add that part to it as well. And I also say that it can be, given the way information is being amplified and how DEI thought leaders are being targeted, you have to be careful about what you're willing to risk in terms of these putting stuff out in public platforms. For me, I'm retired. I have my own company, and so I'm not inside a corporation, which gives me a different way to come at this than someone who is, I use the term too broke to be woke, kind of scenario. So I just want to say that as well.
Anna
Perkins. And one of our previous speakers, Dr. Anna Perkins, have put a stuff in the chat that AI is pretty much a representation of the people who train it. Right. If they've got bias, the bias will be manifested in the AI product that they produce. Well said, Dr. Perkins.
And that's a key.
Professor Perkins.
That is key to remember. It really is. The chat has been just hopping the entire 2 hours. I want to take a quick picture of us and then have my co-founders to give their final thoughts as we close out the program. So, gentlemen, would you just look into your camera? And I'm going to take this one shot. 3, 2, 1. Great. Thank you so much. Let me just take one more for insurance. We'll do that. And let's go here. All right. 3, 2, 1. Awesome. All right. Bill Wells, share your last thoughts.
Well, a lot has been said, no doubt. A lot has been said. What struck me the most about it is really what Evenus, if I boil it down, it's simple. It's information is knowledge, knowledge is power. And so, unfortunately, many people don't have the information, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the power. And so we're walking around almost like zombies in terms of the attacks on our democracy. And everybody's feeling it. It's not just people of color. It's not just a gender issue. It's not just LGBT. It's everybody. And so with all the information that was shared in Effenus, marvelous job, really. It's, that's a lot. We heard a lot today. But in my mind also, I want to make sure that we understand that when it gets down to it, and it's not just in the workplace, although the workplace seems to be where it's really heavily under attack, and in our higher ed institutions. For me, it's simple. As a DEI practitioner and just as a business professional, it's really about the workplace, which is the culture, the workforce, which is people, the talent, and the marketplace, which is customers. That's the business case in and of itself. And I will submit to you that companies may be pushing back what they say, pushing back on DEI. They're not pushing back on the workforce. They're not pushing back on the workplace, and they are not pushing back on the marketplace. So sometimes I get a little intellectual about the approach as opposed to being emotional, because emotion just takes you so far. But again, a great session today. Garth, your emotional plea was heard and it resonates strongly. So I think we've really had quite an interesting session today. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough time for a lot of, other than through the chat, to get a lot of questions out that we could respond to. Maybe we can find a way to refine this and get that out. But I know there are a lot of people on there that had questions. So again, great session today. Thank you so much, Ephesus, for really take Effenus to walk us through this process in such a detailed manner. It truly was a masterclass. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Quickly, Ephesus, 2 seconds in terms of your closing thoughts. And when is your songwriting workshop going to be held? I will sign up immediately.
Well, just quickly, I just appreciate the folks that are joining in to participate in this session. It's about the community. It's about all of us giving back. And for me, as I think about this work around equity and diversity and inclusion, it's not so much about me and us that are sitting on this platform today. It's about our children, our grandchildren. And if we don't speak up, and we've got sort of the depth and the background in some of this work to help inform folks. If we don't speak up and stay attuned to this, we're risking the livelihood of our children and our grandchildren and those that come after. So to me, this is about my life's mission to really do that and to give back in a way that I think is helpful to others. And I'd invite others, and I don't consider myself a know-all, be-all person in this area. I just like to invite others to share information, and we've got to get better at sharing information about what's really in front of us so that we all can become better informed about the issues. So I appreciate the opportunity today to speak with you, and thanks, Carole and team, for the invitation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Garth, Mr. Responder.
I won't say much more that I've already said, but I would just say those of us who are called have a responsibility to that calling, to act, to be brave, to be bold. DEI advocacy and the work that I do around equality and diversity within the legal fraternity comes with risk. But because of who we are, we have a duty to respond, to lead. And our audience no longer have any excuse to say they have not been taught, because today was a masterclass in teachings, and responsibility is on all of us now, is to use that knowledge to effect change. Thank you.
Awesome. Garth Dallas, Bill Wells, Ephesus Henderson, thank you so very much. And I want to just say, I thank all of you for being here, whether you are on one of our other platforms or whether you're in the Zoom room. Thank you so much for hanging in there and for caring about this topic. We are the ones who have to care enough to say no. And we need to go in another direction that is more inclusive and certainly has a level of collaboration building about it. We'll talk more about that with our next programs. The next one will be in October as we look at Black History Month in the United Kingdom. I actually will be on a program at the end of this month in London with Garth Dallas, with Black business owners throughout the UK. I'm really super excited about it. We will post this video and the slides and the music link. We'll do all of that at the website mssconnect.com. So stay tuned. Those of you who are here in the Zoom room, you'll get a link when you can just go and listen, and it will be on Facebook. We're going to put it on YouTube and also LinkedIn. Thank you all so much. We have just begun. We have so much further to go in this resistance movement when it comes to celebrating and acknowledging and respecting diversity, equity, and inclusion. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much. We'll see you the next time. Bye-bye now.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. And my friends, we'll see you back in the Zoom room in about a minute or two, including Ephesus. Take care. Bye-bye.